Hi, Joanne. Welcome to my school.
Thank you very much.
I am so very, very grateful that you could come and help me with my Native studies, my First Nations 12.
Okay.
And I would like to talk about your life. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay, so tell me about yourself.
Well, I was born and raised in the Yukon. I'm 52 years old. I'll be 53 this year. Really 19 though. But no, born and raised in the Yukon. My family is all from here. My mom's family comes from Teslin, so I'm Tlingit. My dad is growing up in this place called Johnson's Crossing, and that's about 32 miles this side of Teslin. So that's where my family is from, is Johnson's Crossing, Teslin area. My dad actually grew up on an island that's about 13 miles down the river, and it's called Big Island, and they call it now Henry Island. So I didn't spend a whole lot of time at Johnson's Crossing. That was where our family was sort of at. I was born in Whitehorse, and up until I was 4, I had lived here. And then when I turned 4, going on to 5, I ended up in residential school.
And so you and your family, do you have any brothers and sisters, siblings?
Yeah, there's my mom and my dad. I have 5 siblings besides myself. My older sister, Shannon, she passed away a year ago. And then there's my brother George, myself, my sister Sharon, Dawn, and Colleen, and my mom and dad. Now, out of the 8 of us, counting my mom and dad, 6 of us went to residential school. My mom and dad both went to residential school. My older sister and my older brother both went, and then my younger sister and I both went as well. When I went into residential school, I was 5 years old. Had gone down to Laura Post when I was 4 with my mom. At the time when back in those days, it was kind of sad, being First Nations, we lost a lot of our rights. We had to give up a lot of things if we were in a tough spot. And what I mean in regard to that is a lot of women, if they were widowed, and it happened, you know, their partners had died, and they have 4 or 5 kids or whatever, the government never made it easy as it is today. If a woman was widowed and had 4 kids, she couldn't easily go to the welfare office and get help. She couldn't easily get a job to look after her children. It came down that A, they were taken and put into care, or B, family members had taken them. Very, very difficult. No support when a woman was left on her own back then. And that's what happened with my family. So my mom, instead of, you know, and it was suggested to her that she put us out to other families, and she said no. And I'm so grateful for that. My mom said, absolutely not. These are my kids, and they're going to be my kids. They are not going anywhere. Yeah, basically is what she said. Because my mom's idea, and because that was where my mom was at, that's what I've picked up now that I'm this age. It's like my kids are number 1 in my life. I will do whatever I can for my kids, and I will never, ever let my kids be raised by someone else, be taken by someone else, no matter how tough it gets for me. I picked that up from my mother. My mother never let us go to anyone else. So for me, you know, if she could do it, she did it with 4 kids, then I could do it with my kid, you know. So learning a lot of that. When I went into residential school, I was 5 years old, and it was specifically because of that. Because there was no jobs that my mom could have done that would have enabled her to look after the 4 of us. And so it came down to choices, right? And I say, you know, today she did the best choice she could. She did the best she could for us, and I'm okay. You know, here I am today, and I'm okay. So,
do you think you could tell me a bit about residential school, like what your experience was in residential school? Do you remember, or?
Oh yeah. I don't think anyone ever forgets residential school. When I remember the first day I walked in there, I was 5 years old, and they just kind of, the nun just sort of said, well, there's a room over there, you go over there. And I'll never forget that, you know, I'll never forget walking in there and standing at the doorway. To this day, like I'm 52 as I said, I have a hard time walking into a room and I don't know what to expect. If I don't know what's in that room, I get really, really nervous. It still affects me today. When I walked into the playroom, when the nun told me, you go into that room there and you sit with the other kids, I walked in and I just kind of stood there. I stood there and I didn't know anybody. I stood there as this 5-year-old little girl and very scared. I had no siblings to come and call me. And you know, even if we did have siblings in our school, we were, yeah, I need some Kleenex.
Behind, right there by the pencil shavings, I think.
When we walked in, like when I went into the playroom, you know, they just kind of said, okay, you go in there and there you go. I think for any kid who's 5 years old and is in a school with, you know, 60 other kids, doesn't know any of them, doesn't know any of the adults in there. I had no idea what I was in for when I walked in there. None. You know, and the thing that kind of got me through that first day, and I will never forget this, and I'm always grateful to these women. There were a couple of girls sitting there, and one was a little bit older, and she told her friend to move over. She's like, move over. So they moved over, and she made a spot, and she looked at me, and she said, hey, and I kind of looked, and she said, come here. Well, I got scared, right? I didn't know what was going on, and she looked at me and she said, sit here. You sit here beside me, and you're going to be okay. I'm going to look after you, and I'm going to make sure you're all right here. Well, that meant so much to me because I'm 5 years old, I have no family there, and here's this strange girl that I've never ever met telling me, you sit beside me and I'm going to look after you. Today in my life, I meet people, strangers to me, and I will go out of my way to help them. I will do what I can to make people feel okay, because that's what I learned when I went to residential school, that somebody cared enough that I didn't know to help me out. So that's what I do today. If I don't know people, but I see them stuck, I see them needing help, I see them just needing a simple hug. How are you doing? Then I offer that. Doesn't cost me anything. And on the other end, they feel okay. It's so important for us to treat people good. And you know, for me, and looking at the things that I went through in residential school, to be able to do that today is, for me, quite an accomplishment, you know, because you could go into the negatives. You could be angry. And, you know, residential school was not, I don't think it was ever meant for kids. It should have never, ever been set up for the kids. After that experience, in the dorms, like where we slept, it was a great big sleeping room, and they just had a bunch of beds lined up. You were really on your own. You were really on your own. My little sister was in there, and in between our dorms, like on this side was where the intermediates were. They had beds lined up, and then we had a row of sinks in between here, and then on this side was where the juniors were, and at the end here were boxes, little cubbyhole boxes. And at the start of every school year, when we got there, we got a t-shirt, or maybe 2 t-shirts, 2 pairs of underpants, a couple pairs of socks. I don't remember. The cubbyhole was about this big. Everything we had for a year fit in there. Everything. I remember watching a movie after I grew up, and it was about a woman's prison. And the woman that was going to jail, is kind of funny, but she was going to collect her towel and toothbrush and stuff like that. Well, I'm sitting there watching this, you know, and all of a sudden I see the guard put everything in a towel, fold the towel, and slid it across to her. And boy, that took me right back to being 5 again, because that's exactly how it was done to us. You know, we got a towel, we got a toothbrush, some kind of powder, our underwear, our socks, our nightgown, our play clothes, our school clothes, and then they just fold it and slide it across to you. And that's your stuff for all year. You're in super trouble if you lost any of it. You know, we all dress the same, we all look the same, and that was it. And if you lost it, you would get in trouble because you lost it, and you would go without if you lost it. Some other kids, something might happen to it. You know, bedwetting was very common, but nobody talked about it because you were made fun of. You know, you had a sheet put over your head, or you just didn't talk about things that happened. You know, so you carry that with you until you grow up. And you know, you look at, like, I see the people that I've gone to school with, and I see what the effects of residential school have done to them, and I sit back and I go, you know, I don't know if you ever get over that. This is stuff that's done to you as a little kid. And I'm talking, you know, I'm not going to get into the abuses that I've gone through, but I will tell you this, that I was physically abused, I was mentally abused, I was emotionally abused, and I was also sexually abused. I was 5 years old when I was abused in Lower Post. And I think we need to stop for a sec